Hey everyone, and welcome back to This Real English. I'm David.
And I'm Lily. Thanks for tuning in today. Before we dive into today's topic, David, I got some interesting feedback from our last episode about small talk.
Oh really? What did people say?
Well, Maria from Brazil wrote that she tried using some of our small talk phrases at her local coffee shop, and the barista actually started a real conversation with her. She was so excited.
That's awesome. See, that's exactly what we're talking about. Real English in real situations. And speaking of real situations, today we're tackling a question that comes up constantly. Are Americans really friendly?
This is such a fascinating topic because I think there are so many stereotypes and misconceptions floating around. Some people think Americans are superficially friendly but not genuinely warm, while others think we're the friendliest people on earth.
Exactly. And as someone who's lived in different parts of the US and traveled internationally, I can tell you, it's complicated. So today we're going to break this down, share some real experiences, and give you the vocabulary you need to talk about personality traits and social interactions.
Perfect. Let's get started.
So Lily, let's start with your perspective. You grew up in the Midwest. That's supposed to be the friendly part of America, right?
Oh, the famous Midwest nice. There's definitely some truth to that stereotype. Growing up in Ohio, it was completely normal to wave at neighbors you barely knew, hold doors open for strangers, and chat with people in grocery store lines.
That's interesting because I'm originally from New York, and that kind of behavior would actually make people suspicious. Not the door holding, that's universal, but the random chatting with strangers? People would think you were trying to sell them something.
Exactly, and that's the first thing our listeners need to understand. America is huge and incredibly diverse. What's considered friendly in one region might seem intrusive or fake in another.
Let's break this down regionally for a moment. In the South, you've got what people call Southern hospitality. Lily, you lived in Georgia for a few years, right?
I did, and wow, the difference was immediately noticeable. People would say, "How are you?" and actually wait for an answer. Cashiers would comment on your purchases, strangers would compliment your outfit. It was like friendliness on steroids compared to what I was used to.
But here's where it gets tricky, and this is important for our international listeners to understand. There's a difference between being polite, being friendly, and being genuinely interested in forming a relationship.
Absolutely. Americans have mastered what I call surface level friendliness. We're really good at pleasant small talk, smiling at strangers, and creating a positive atmosphere. But that doesn't necessarily mean we want to be your best friend.
Right. And this can be confusing for people from cultures where friendliness equals friendship. I remember when I was teaching English in Japan, several of my students mentioned feeling confused by American friendliness because back home, if someone was that warm and talkative, it usually meant they wanted to develop a real friendship.
That's such a good point. So let's talk about what American friendliness actually looks like in practice. David, what would you say are the most common friendly behaviors Americans display?
Well, there's the smile and nod when you make eye contact with someone on the street. There's holding doors, saying, "Excuse me," when you bump into someone, and the classic, "How's it going?" greeting that nobody really expects you to answer in detail.
Don't forget about compliments to strangers. Americans love to compliment each other's clothes, hair, or even just say, "I love your energy" to someone they've never met.
Oh yeah, especially in places like California. I remember being shocked the first time someone in Los Angeles complimented my vibe. Like, you don't even know me.
But here's what's interesting, and this might surprise some of our listeners. This surface level friendliness actually serves a really important social function. It creates a pleasant environment for everyone and reduces social tension.
Exactly. Think about it. If you're stuck in a long line at the DMV or waiting for a delayed flight, having people around you who are pleasant and occasionally crack jokes makes the experience so much better than if everyone just ignored each other.
Now let's address the elephant in the room, the criticism that American friendliness is fake or superficial.
I've heard this so many times, especially from European friends. And I get it. From the outside, it can seem insincere when someone acts super friendly but doesn't follow up with genuine interest in your life.
But I think calling it fake misses the point. It's not fake, it's just serving a different purpose than deep friendship. It's social lubrication, you know? It makes daily interactions smoother and more pleasant.
That's a great way to put it. Although, I will say, Americans can sometimes struggle with the transition from friendly acquaintance to actual friend. We're great at the surface stuff, but we're not always great at deepening relationships.
So true. I think we sometimes rely too heavily on that surface level pleasantness instead of putting in the effort to really get to know people. But when Americans do decide to be your friend, they can be incredibly loyal and generous.
I think the key for our listeners is understanding the context and not taking the initial friendliness as a promise of deep friendship. Enjoy it for what it is, people trying to make your day a little brighter.
And if you want to move beyond surface level friendliness with an American, you usually need to take some initiative. Suggest meeting for coffee, ask for their contact information, follow up on conversations you've had.
Great advice. Now, before we move to our vocabulary section, let's talk about regional and cultural variations within America itself, because our international listeners might encounter very different types of American friendliness depending on where they are.
Yes, so we've mentioned the Midwest and the South. The Northeast tends to be more direct and less initially warm, but once you break through that exterior, people can be incredibly genuine and helpful.
The West Coast has its own version, very casual, environmentally conscious friendliness. People might invite you to a yoga class or hiking trip before they even know your last name.
So true. And then you have places like Texas, where friendliness comes with a side of state pride. Don't be surprised if someone enthusiastically tells you why Texas is better than wherever you're from.
The point is, there's no single American way of being friendly. It varies by region, generation, cultural background, and individual personality.
All right, everyone, time for our vocabulary breakdown. We've used a lot of great expressions and phrases during today's discussion, so let's make sure you've got them all down.
First up, let's talk about different ways to describe friendliness. We mentioned surface level friendliness. This describes interactions that are pleasant and positive but don't go very deep emotionally.
Right. And the opposite would be genuine warmth or authentic connection. These phrases describe friendliness that comes from real interest in the other person.
We also use the phrase social lubrication. This is a great metaphor. Just like lubrication makes machines work more smoothly, social pleasantries make human interactions work more smoothly.
I love that expression. Now let's talk about some regional descriptions. We mentioned Midwest nice, Southern hospitality, and East Coast directness. These are all common ways Americans describe different regional personality styles.
Another useful phrase we used was friendliness on steroids. When something is on steroids, it means it's an extreme or exaggerated version of the normal thing.
So, friendliness on steroids means friendliness that's much more intense than usual. You might also hear kindness on steroids or politeness on steroids.
Let's talk about some phrasal verbs we used. Break through means to get past a barrier or obstacle. So when we said break through that exterior, we meant getting past someone's initial coldness or reserve.
Another phrasal verb was follow up. This means to take additional action after an initial contact. So if you meet someone and want to be friends, you need to follow up by texting them or making plans.
We also use crack jokes, which means to tell jokes or make humorous comments. Americans do this a lot in uncomfortable situations to lighten the mood.
Now let's look at some expressions for describing social interactions. We said Americans are good at small talk. This refers to light, casual conversation about non-controversial topics like weather, sports, or current events.
We also mentioned surface-level pleasantries. Pleasantries are polite, friendly comments that don't have much deep meaning, like, "How's your day going?" or "Nice weather, isn't it?"
Here's a really useful expression, the elephant in the room. This means an obvious problem or controversial topic that everyone knows about but nobody wants to discuss directly.
Great one. We also used miss the point, which means to fail to understand the main idea or purpose of something. If someone criticizes American friendliness as fake, they might be missing the point of what that friendliness is trying to accomplish.
Let's talk about some personality adjectives. We used intrusive, which means inappropriately personal or pushy. Behavior that's friendly in one culture might seem intrusive in another.
We also said people might seem suspicious, meaning they don't trust your motivations. And we described some Americans as loyal and generous, which are positive traits, meaning faithful and willing to give or share.
Another useful word was superficial, meaning shallow or not deep. This is often used to criticize American friendliness, though we argue that superficial friendliness still has value.
Let's cover a few more expressions. Take initiative means to be the first person to act or make a suggestion. If you want American friends, you often need to take initiative.
We used put in the effort, which means to work hard at something or try your best. Building real friendships requires putting in the effort, beyond just being polite.
And finally, break it down means to analyze something systematically or explain it step by step. That's exactly what we did with American friendliness today.
Perfect. Now remember, everyone, the best way to learn these expressions is to use them. Try incorporating one or two into your conversations this week.
So, to wrap up today's discussion, are Americans friendly? I think our answer is, it depends on what you mean by friendly and which Americans you're talking about.
Exactly. Americans are generally skilled at creating pleasant social interactions, but that doesn't automatically translate to deep friendships. And there's huge variation across regions and individuals.
The key takeaway for our listeners is to appreciate American friendliness for what it is, an attempt to make daily life more pleasant without expecting it to automatically lead to lasting relationships.
But also don't write it off as completely fake. That surface-level pleasantness creates a more positive environment for everyone, and it can be the starting point for real friendships if you're willing to take the next steps.
Now, we want to hear from you. Have you experienced American friendliness? How did it compare to friendliness in your home country? What confused you or surprised you?
Send us your stories and questions. You can email us or leave comments wherever you listen to this podcast. We love hearing about your real English experiences.
And if you're planning to visit or move to America, what questions do you have about social interactions? We might feature your question in a future episode.
Before we sign off, here's your homework for this week. Practice one piece of surface-level friendliness in English. Compliment a stranger, hold a door with a smile, or make small talk while waiting in line.
Great idea! Remember, you don't have to become best friends with everyone, but practicing these social skills will make your English interactions smoother and more enjoyable.
Thanks for listening to This Real English. I'm Lily.
And I'm David. Until next time, keep practicing your real English.
Bye, everyone!